Namaste listeners. The Art of Self-Care is a book by Sanjay Agarwala that tells the story of Sagar, a successful chartered accountant, and Neelam, a dedicated teacher. Sagar and Neelam have been childhood friends who eventually got married. However, despite their professional success and seemingly perfect life, they both struggled with self-doubt, anxiety, and burnout. Through their experiences, the book offers 10 chapters that provide practical advice and strategies for practicing self-care and building a positive relationship with oneself. The first chapter emphasizes the importance of self-compassion and being kind and forgiving to oneself, just as one would for a dear friend. In the following chapters, the book covers topics such as focusing on strengths, accepting imperfections, setting boundaries, taking care of physical and mental health, embracing uniqueness, staying authentic, learning from mistakes, and celebrating oneself. Throughout the book, Sagar and Neelam share their personal stories and how they applied the strategies to improve their lives. The book highlights the importance of self-care in leading a fulfilling and happy life. About the author. Sanjay Agarwala was born on 22nd February into a Hindu Marwadi business family in Jalpaiguri, a small town located in the West Bengal state of India. He grew up in a traditional and disciplined household, with strong values and principles instilled by his parents. Sanjay pursued his higher education in commerce and economics and excelled in his studies. He realized his passion for teaching while he was pursuing his degree and decided to become a teacher himself. Sanjay started his teaching career in 2008 and has since been educating students for over 15 years. His teaching style is unique and personalized, and he makes sure that his students understand the concepts thoroughly. Over the years, he gained a reputation as a respected and dedicated educator, and his students often referred to him as their mentor and guide. Sanjay has been teaching for over 15 years now and has touched the lives of thousands of students. His passion for teaching and his dedication to his profession are evident in his approach towards education. He believes in nurturing a love for learning in his students, and he encourages them to ask questions and explore new ideas. Apart from teaching, Sanjay has another passion: martial arts. He has been practicing various forms of martial arts for over a decade and has achieved a high level of proficiency in many of them. His dedication and hard work have earned him several accolades and awards in this field. But Sanjay's talents didn't stop there. He was also a gifted poet and author. He writes poems that inspire and touch the hearts of his readers. His poetry is deeply meaningful and reflects his experiences and observations. Sanjay is also an author and has written several educational books that cater to the needs of students. His books are comprehensive and cover various topics related to commerce and economics. In his free time, Sanjay likes to read books on philosophy and spirituality. He is a strong believer in the power of positive thinking and is a proponent of mindfulness and meditation. He also enjoys spending time with his family and loves to travel and explore new places. Despite the challenges he has faced throughout his life, Sanjay remains committed to his work and to his students. His tireless dedication and unwavering spirit have made him a true inspiration to all who know him, and his impact on the world of education will be felt for many years to come. About the book. Self-care is a vital practice that many of us tend to overlook in our busy lives. We often prioritize our responsibilities and obligations towards others, neglecting our own needs and well-being. However, it is crucial to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally to lead a healthy and fulfilling life. In this book, The Art of Self-Care, I share the story of Sagar and Neelam, who struggled to prioritize their self-care needs until they learned to cultivate self-compassion, acknowledge their strengths and imperfections, set boundaries, and embrace their uniqueness. Through Sagar and Neelam's journey, I explore 10 key practices that can help anyone enhance their self-care routine. These practices include practicing self-compassion, focusing on strengths, accepting imperfections, setting boundaries, taking care of physical and mental health, embracing uniqueness, being authentic, learning from mistakes, and celebrating oneself. I believe that by incorporating these practices into our daily lives, we can develop a stronger sense of self-awareness, self-love, and inner peace. The journey of self-care is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. It requires effort, commitment, and patience. However, the rewards of self-care are immeasurable. When we take care of ourselves, we become more resilient, confident, and compassionate. We are better equipped to face life's challenges, and we can build more meaningful relationships with ourselves and others. I hope that this book serves as a guide and inspiration for anyone who wishes to enhance their self-care routine and cultivate a deeper connection with themselves. Remember, self-care is not selfish, it's essential. Contents: Chapter 1, Practice Self-Compassion. Chapter 2, Focus on your strengths. Chapter 3, Accept your imperfections. Chapter 4, Set boundaries. Chapter 5, Take care of your physical health. Chapter 6, Nurture your mental health. Chapter 7, Embrace your uniqueness. Chapter 8, Be authentic. Chapter 9, Learn from your mistakes. Chapter 10, Celebrate yourself. Let's take these 10 chapters one by one. We will listen to each chapter in order, starting from the beginning and moving forward until we reach the end. Chapter 1. Practice Self-Compassion. Sagar and Neelam had been friends since childhood. They lived in the same neighborhood, went to the same school, and had a lot of shared interests. They both loved playing sports, reading books, and watching movies. They were each other's confidants and knew each other's secrets. However, Sagar had always struggled with self-doubt and low self-esteem. He was never satisfied with his performance and would beat himself up over small mistakes. On the other hand, Neelam was always positive and optimistic. She practiced self-compassion and believed in being kind to oneself. One day, Sagar was feeling particularly down. He had failed an important exam and was convinced that he was a failure. Neelam noticed that something was off and asked him what was wrong. Sagar confided in her about his exam and how he felt like he had let everyone down. Neelam listened patiently and then said, "Sagar, you need to practice self-compassion. You are being too hard on yourself. Everyone makes mistakes and it's okay to fail sometimes. You don't have to be perfect all the time." Sagar was surprised to hear this. He had never thought about being kind to himself. He had always believed that he needed to be tough on himself to improve. Neelam explained that self-compassion was about treating oneself with the same kindness and understanding as one would treat a good friend. Over the next few weeks, Neelam helped Sagar practice self-compassion. Whenever Sagar would start to criticize himself, Neelam would remind him to be kind and forgiving. She would tell him that he was doing his best and that was all that mattered. Slowly but surely, Sagar began to feel better. He stopped beating himself up over small mistakes and started to take care of himself. He would go for walks, listen to music, and read books that he enjoyed. He started to see himself in a new light and realized that he was not a failure. One day, Sagar came to Neelam with a big smile on his face. "I did it," he said. "I passed the exam." Neelam hugged him and congratulated him. "See, I told you that you could do it," she said. Sagar was grateful to Neelam for helping him practice self-compassion. He realized that he had been too hard on himself and that he needed to be kind and understanding towards himself. He knew that he still had a lot to work on, but he was no longer afraid of making mistakes. From that day on, Sagar made a conscious effort to be kind and forgiving towards himself. He started to see the positive changes in his life. He was more confident, more optimistic, and more resilient. He knew that he could always count on Neelam to be there for him and to remind him to practice self-compassion. In the end, Sagar and Neelam both learned an important lesson about the power of self-compassion. They realized that it was not just about being kind to oneself, but also about being kind to others. They started to treat everyone with more kindness and understanding, just as they had done for each other. They knew that life was full of ups and downs, but with self-compassion, they could face any challenge that came their way. Chapter 2. Focus on your strengths. Sagar and Neelam had grown up together and had shared many experiences throughout their lives. Sagar was known for his intelligence and analytical skills, while Neelam was known for her creativity and artistic abilities. One day, Sagar and Neelam were having a conversation about their respective strengths. Sagar was quick to highlight his academic achievements and his ability to solve complex problems, while Neelam talked about her passion for art and her creativity. They both agreed that it was important to acknowledge and celebrate their positive qualities and skills. As they talked, Sagar mentioned that he had always been interested in starting his own business. He had several ideas for products that he believed could be successful, but he had never taken the plunge because he was afraid of failing. Neelam encouraged him to focus on his strengths and to believe in himself. "You are one of the smartest people I know," she said. "If anyone can make a success of a business, it's you." Sagar was grateful for Neelam's support and encouragement. He decided to take her advice and started working on his business idea. He spent countless hours researching and refining his product, and he finally launched his business. At first, things were slow. Sagar encountered several obstacles and setbacks, and he began to doubt himself. But he kept reminding himself of his strengths, his intelligence, and his analytical skills. He analyzed his problems and came up with creative solutions. He was determined to succeed. Meanwhile, Neelam was also working hard on her own creative projects. She was an artist, and she had always loved expressing herself through her art. She had never really considered selling her artwork, but she began to think about it after seeing Sagar's success. Neelam started to create pieces of art that she thought would appeal to others. She put together a portfolio and began to show it to galleries and potential buyers. She was nervous at first, but she reminded herself of her strengths, her creativity, and her passion for art. To her surprise, Neelam's artwork was well received. People loved her unique style and the way she expressed herself through her art. She began to sell her artwork and even had her first solo exhibition. Sagar was proud of Neelam's success, and he was happy to see her thriving in her own field. He knew that they had both achieved success because they had focused on their strengths and believed in themselves. As time passed, Sagar's business continued to grow. He hired employees and expanded his product line, and he even opened up a storefront. He was now a successful entrepreneur, and he had achieved his dream of owning his own business. Neelam continued to create beautiful artwork, and her reputation as an artist grew. She was invited to participate in several exhibitions, and her artwork was even featured in a local magazine. She was happy doing what she loved and was grateful for the support of her friends and family. Sagar and Neelam's success was a testament to the power of focusing on one's strengths and believing in oneself. They both acknowledged and celebrated their positive qualities, skills, and achievements, and they used them to achieve their goals. They had overcome their fears and doubts, and they had become successful in their respective fields. As they sat down together to celebrate their achievements, Sagar and Neelam reflected on their journey. They were grateful for each other's support and encouragement, and they knew that they could achieve anything they set their minds to as long as they focused on their strengths and believed in themselves. Chapter 3. Accept Your Imperfections. Sagar and Neelam had been friends since they were in the first grade. They had grown up together and shared everything. They were always there for each other, through thick and thin. As they grew older, they developed feelings for each other, but they never acted on them. They were too scared of losing their friendship. One beautiful afternoon, Sagar and Neelam decided to meet up in the park. They had not seen each other for a while, and they had a lot to catch up on. As they sat on the grass, under the shade of a tree, they talked about everything that had been going on in their lives. They talked about their dreams, their goals, their fears, and their imperfections. Sagar was always very self-conscious about his height. He was not very tall, and he always felt like people looked down on him because of it. Neelam, on the other hand, was always very self-conscious about her weight. She was not overweight, but she always felt like she needed to be thinner to be accepted by society. As they talked, they both realized that they were not alone in their insecurities. They both had flaws that they were ashamed of, but they realized that it was okay to have imperfections. They were still good people despite their flaws. Sagar looked at Neelam and said, "You know, I used to hate my height. I always felt like people were judging me because of it, but I have come to accept that I can't change it. I am who I am, and I'm proud of it." Neelam smiled at Sagar and said, "I feel the same way about my weight. I used to hate the way I looked, but I have learned to accept that I'm not perfect, and that's okay." Sagar and Neelam spent the rest of the afternoon talking about their imperfections. They talked about their mistakes and their regrets. They talked about the times they had hurt each other and the times they had forgiven each other. They talked about everything, and in doing so, they realized how much they had grown over the years. As the sun began to set, Sagar looked at Neelam and said, "You know, Neelam, I have been thinking a lot about us lately. I know we have been friends for a long time, but I can't help but feel like there is something more between us." Neelam looked at Sagar and smiled. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "I feel the same way, Sagar. I have always had feelings for you, but I was too scared to act on them." Sagar and Neelam leaned in and kissed each other. It was a moment they had both been waiting for, and it felt like everything was falling into place. They had accepted their imperfections, and they had realized that nobody is perfect. They had learned to love themselves, flaws and all, and that had led them to love each other. As they walked out of the park, hand in hand, Sagar looked at Neelam and said, "You know, I used to think that perfection was the key to happiness, but I realize now that it's our imperfections that make us who we are, and that's what makes life worth living." Neelam smiled at Sagar and said, "I couldn't agree more. Our imperfections are what make us unique, and that's what makes us beautiful." From that day on, Sagar and Neelam were inseparable. They had accepted their imperfections and had learned to love themselves and each other, flaws and all. They had found happiness in their imperfections. Chapter 4. Set Boundaries. Sagar and Neelam had been dating for a few months now, and things were going well between them. They enjoyed spending time together and trying out new restaurants in the city. However, Sagar noticed that Neelam often said yes to things that didn't serve her or compromised her well-being. He wanted to help her set boundaries and prioritize her needs, but he wasn't sure how to bring it up without offending her. One evening, they decided to have dinner at a new restaurant that had recently opened in the city. The atmosphere was cozy, and the food smelled delicious. Sagar noticed that Neelam seemed distracted and preoccupied. He asked her if everything was okay, and she admitted that she had a lot on her mind. She was struggling to balance her work and personal life, and she felt like she was constantly saying yes to things that didn't serve her. Sagar listened intently and then gently suggested that she set some boundaries for herself. He reminded her that it was essential to prioritize her needs and say no to things that compromised her well-being. Neelam nodded in agreement, but Sagar could tell that she was still unsure about how to implement this in her life. Over dinner, they talked about some ways that Neelam could start setting boundaries. Sagar suggested that she make a list of her priorities and then only say yes to things that aligned with those priorities. Neelam liked this idea and decided to try it out. As they enjoyed their meal, Neelam started to relax and open up more about her struggles. Sagar listened attentively, offering support and encouragement. Neelam felt grateful to have someone in her life who cared about her well-being and was willing to help her set boundaries. After dinner, they walked around the city, enjoying the warm summer evening. Neelam felt lighter and more relaxed, knowing that she had a plan to prioritize her needs and set boundaries. She thanked Sagar for his support and promised to keep him updated on her progress. In the weeks that followed, Neelam started implementing some of the ideas they had discussed. She made a list of her priorities and started saying no to things that didn't serve her. She found that she had more time and energy to focus on the things that were important to her, and she felt more in control of her life. Sagar noticed the positive changes in Neelam and felt proud of her for taking steps to prioritize her well-being. He continued to support her and encourage her to keep setting boundaries and prioritizing her needs. As their relationship grew stronger, they continued to have open and honest conversations about their needs and boundaries. They learned to respect each other's boundaries and support each other in their personal growth. One day, Neelam surprised Sagar with a special dinner at the same restaurant where they had first discussed setting boundaries. Over dinner, she thanked him for his support and guidance and for helping her to prioritize her well-being. Sagar felt touched by her words and grateful for the connection they shared. As they left the restaurant, Hand in hand, Sagar realized that setting boundaries and prioritizing their needs had strengthened their relationship. They had learned to communicate more effectively, respect each other's needs, and grow together as a couple. Chapter 5. Take care of your physical health. Neelam had known Sagar for as long as she could remember. They had been best friends since their school days, and their bond had only grown stronger over the years. They had shared everything with each other, from their deepest secrets to their wildest dreams. But when Sagar fell ill, Neelam was worried sick. Sagar had always been a health-conscious person. He would exercise regularly, eat nutritious foods, and get enough sleep to feel energized and healthy. But despite all his efforts, he had fallen sick, and it seemed like no amount of healthy habits could prevent it. Neelam was determined to help her friend recover, and she knew that taking care of his physical health was the first step. She started by making sure that Sagar was eating the right foods. She would prepare meals for him, which included plenty of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. She would also make sure that he was drinking enough water and avoiding sugary drinks. Neelam knew that a healthy diet was crucial for Sagar's recovery, and she made sure that he was eating well every day. Next, Neelam encouraged Sagar to get some exercise. She knew that physical activity would not only help him recover faster but would also boost his mood and energy levels. She would take him for short walks in the park, and they would do simple exercises together at home. Neelam made sure that Sagar did not overdo it and kept his exercise routine simple and easy to follow. Finally, Neelam made sure that Sagar was getting enough sleep. She knew that rest was essential for the body to heal, and she would make sure that Sagar was getting at least 8 hours of sleep every night. She would also encourage him to take short naps during the day if he felt tired or exhausted. Neelam's efforts paid off, and Sagar started to recover. He began to feel more energized and healthier each day, and he was grateful for Neelam's support and care. He knew that he would not have been able to recover so quickly without her help. As Sagar started to feel better, he realized the importance of taking care of his physical health. He knew that his healthy habits had helped him recover faster, and he was determined to continue living a healthy lifestyle. He promised Neelam that he would make sure to eat well, exercise regularly, and get enough sleep every day, no matter how busy his schedule was. Neelam was thrilled to hear this and was proud of her friend's determination to stay healthy. She knew that Sagar was now on the right track, and she promised to continue supporting him in any way she could. As the days went by, Sagar's health improved, and he was soon back to his old self. He resumed his work, started exercising regularly, and made sure to eat nutritious foods every day. Neelam was happy to see her friend back on his feet, and she knew that their friendship would only grow stronger with time. In the end, Sagar's illness had taught him a valuable lesson about the importance of taking care of his physical health. He knew that a healthy lifestyle was crucial for his well-being, and he was determined to make sure that he continued living one. And he knew that he had Neelam to thank for her constant support and care during his time of need. Chapter 6. Nurture your mental health. Sagar walked through the door of his apartment, feeling completely drained. His job as a chartered accountant was demanding, and he often found himself working long hours to meet project deadlines. But today, he felt particularly exhausted. As he kicked off his shoes and made his way to the living room, he noticed that the apartment was quiet. His wife, Neelam, was nowhere to be seen. He frowned, wondering where she could be. Just then, he heard a soft noise coming from the bedroom. Curious, he walked towards the room and pushed the door open. Inside, he found Neelam sitting on the bed, surrounded by pillows and blankets. She was reading a book, her eyes fixed on the pages. "Hey," Sagar said, walking towards her. "What are you doing?" Neelam looked up, smiling. "Just reading," she said. "I wanted to relax a bit before starting dinner." Sagar walked over to the bed and sat down next to her. He sighed, feeling the stress of the day slowly fade away. "I wish I could relax like you do," he said. Neelam looked at him, concern in her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked. Sagar shook his head. "Just work," he said. "It's been tough lately." Neelam nodded, understanding. She knew how demanding Sagar's job was and how much pressure he was under. "Well, maybe I can help you relax," she said. Sagar raised an eyebrow. "How?" Neelam smiled and put her book aside. "First, let's talk," she said. "Tell me what's been bothering you." Sagar hesitated, not sure where to begin. But Neelam's gentle presence and comforting voice made him feel safe. So he started to talk, sharing his concerns and frustrations about work. As he spoke, Neelam listened attentively, offering words of encouragement and support. She reminded him that his job was just one aspect of his life and that he needed to take care of his mental health as well. Sagar nodded, realizing that she was right. He had been so focused on work that he had neglected his own well-being. "You're right," he said. "I need to take better care of myself." Neelam smiled. "I can help you with that," she said. "Let's practice some mindfulness together." She guided Sagar through a short meditation, encouraging him to focus on his breath and let go of his worries. Sagar felt a sense of calm wash over him, and he realized how much he had needed this moment of stillness. After the meditation, Neelam suggested they do something that would bring them both joy. She suggested they cook dinner together, something they hadn't done in a while. Sagar agreed, and they headed to the kitchen. Neelam put on some music, and they started to chop vegetables and mix ingredients. As they worked, they chatted and laughed, enjoying each other's company. By the time dinner was ready, Sagar felt much better. He felt more relaxed, and his stress seemed to have melted away. They sat down to eat, savoring the flavors of the dish they had prepared together. As they ate, Neelam brought up the idea of seeking professional support if Sagar needed it. She reminded him that it was okay to ask for help and that mental health was just as important as physical health. Sagar nodded, feeling grateful for Neelam's wisdom and kindness. He realized how lucky he was to have her in his life. As they finished dinner and cleaned up the kitchen, Sagar felt a sense of renewal. He felt more connected to himself. Chapter 7. Embrace Your Uniqueness. Sagar stood nervously by the window, his eyes darting back and forth as he waited for Neelam to arrive. He had been looking forward to seeing her all day, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He knew that Neelam had been having a tough time at work lately, and he couldn't help but worry that she would come home in a bad mood. Finally, he heard the familiar sound of Neelam's car pulling into the driveway. He rushed to the door to greet her, his heart beating faster with each passing second. When she walked in, he was relieved to see that she was smiling. "Hey, Sagar," she said, giving him a quick kiss on the cheek. How was your day? It was fine, he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. How was yours? Neelam sighed, her smile fading. It was tough, she said. The kids were really difficult today, and my lesson plan didn't go as well as I had hoped. Sagar frowned sympathetically. I'm sorry to hear that, he said. Is there anything I can do to help? Neelam shook her head. No, I just need to vent for a little while, she said. Is that okay? Of course, Sagar said, leading her to the couch. I'm here to listen. Neelam talked for a while, recounting the challenges she had faced that day. Sagar listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and support when she needed them. As she talked, he couldn't help but think about the topic he had been pondering all day. He had always admired Neelam's individuality, her quirks and differences that made her who she was. But he knew that she didn't always see those things as strengths. Sometimes, she compared herself to other teachers who seemed to have it all together, and he could see how much it weighed on her. When Neelam finally finished venting, Sagar took a deep breath and decided to broach the subject. Neelam, can I ask you something? He said. Sure, she replied. You know how I have always admired your individuality, your quirks and differences that make you who you are, he said. Neelam looked at him skeptically. I suppose, she said. But what does that have to do with anything? Well, I have been thinking about it a lot lately, Sagar said. And I just wanted to remind you how important it is to embrace those things about yourself. Neelam looked puzzled. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, don't compare yourself to other teachers who seem to have it all together, Sagar said. You have your own unique approach to teaching, and your students love you for it. You don't need to be like anyone else to be a great teacher. Neelam was silent for a moment, considering his words. I guess you are right, she said finally. I just get so caught up in trying to be perfect that I forget to be myself. Sagar took her hand and squeezed it. You don't need to be perfect, he said. You just need to be you. Neelam smiled at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you, Sagar, she said. I needed to hear that today. From that moment on, Neelam started to see things differently. She began to embrace her uniqueness, her quirks, differences, and individuality. She stopped comparing herself to other teachers and started focusing on what made her special. Chapter 8. Be Authentic. Sagar and Neelam had been married for 3 years and they had a strong bond. They had always shared their values, beliefs, and interests with each other, and they had never compromised their identities for the sake of others' approval. This was what made their relationship so special. One day, Sagar surprised Neelam by taking her to the cinema. They were both big movie buffs and loved watching films together. As they walked into the theater, Sagar could see that Neelam was excited to watch the latest romantic comedy that had just been released. However, as they sat down in their seats, Sagar noticed that the couple sitting next to them were behaving in a very distracting way. They were talking loudly, using their phones, and rustling their bags. Sagar tried to ignore them at first, but as the noise continued, he began to feel annoyed and irritated. He turned to Neelam and said, "These people are ruining the movie for us. I can't concentrate with all this noise." Neelam nodded in agreement, but she didn't want to confront the couple or cause a scene. She knew that Sagar could be quite assertive at times, and she didn't want him to lose his cool in public. As the movie continued, Sagar became more and more agitated. He could feel his blood boiling and his temper rising. He knew that he had to do something, but he didn't want to cause a scene either. Finally, he turned to the couple and said in a firm but polite voice, "Excuse me, could you please keep your voices down? We are trying to watch the movie." The couple looked surprised but then quickly apologized and lowered their voices. Sagar could feel the tension in the air dissipating, and he was able to relax and enjoy the rest of the film with Neelam. After the movie, as they were walking out of the theater, Neelam turned to Sagar and said, "You were so brave to confront those people. I know it's not easy for you to speak up like that, but you stayed true to your values and beliefs. I'm proud of you." Sagar smiled and replied, "I couldn't let those people ruin our movie experience. But more importantly, I couldn't compromise my identity for the sake of their approval. I know that it's important to stand up for what we believe in, even if it's uncomfortable or difficult." Neelam nodded in agreement and took Sagar's hand. They walked out of the theater together, happy in the knowledge that they had stayed true to themselves and each other. Their love for each other had only grown stronger through their shared values, beliefs, and interests. They knew that no matter what challenges they faced in the future, they would always stay authentic to who they were and what they believed in. Chapter 9. Learn from your mistakes. Sagar and Neelam had been married for 3 years now. They fell in love and decided to get married. They had a beautiful wedding, surrounded by friends and family. But like any other couple, they had their ups and downs. There were times when they fought and argued, but they always managed to work through their issues. Sagar had a habit of being impulsive, while Neelam was more methodical in her approach. This led to some disagreements between them, but they always found a way to resolve them. On their third marriage anniversary, Sagar and Neelam decided to take a trip to a remote hill station. They wanted to spend some quality time together and reflect on their relationship. They booked a cozy cottage and settled in for the week. On the first night of their trip, they sat outside on the porch, sipping hot tea and watching the stars. Sagar broke the silence and said, "You know, Neelam, I have made a lot of mistakes in our marriage. I have been impulsive and said things that hurt you. I wish I could take them back." Neelam smiled and replied, "Sagar, we all make mistakes. Instead of beating yourself up for past failures, use them as opportunities to learn, grow, and improve. We have come a long way in our relationship, and we have learned so much about each other. I appreciate you for acknowledging your mistakes and wanting to be better." Sagar was touched by Neelam's words. He realized that instead of dwelling on his mistakes, he could learn from them and become a better husband. He decided to make a conscious effort to listen to Neelam more and not act impulsively. The next day, they went on a long hike to a nearby waterfall. The scenery was breathtaking, and the fresh air rejuvenated them. As they sat by the waterfall, Sagar opened up to Neelam and shared his fears and insecurities. He admitted that he sometimes felt inadequate and unsure of himself. Neelam held his hand and said, "Sagar, you are an amazing husband. You make me laugh, and you always know how to cheer me up when I am feeling down. You are the most important person in my life, and I love you just the way you are. Don't ever feel like you are not good enough." Sagar felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He realized that he didn't need to be perfect to be a good husband. He just needed to be himself and love Neelam with all his heart. The rest of their trip was filled with laughter, love, and introspection. They talked about their goals and dreams and how they could support each other. They decided to start a new tradition on their wedding anniversary to reflect on their mistakes, learn from them, and appreciate how far they had come in their relationship. As they packed their bags to leave the hill station, Sagar hugged Neelam tightly and whispered, "Thank you for being the most amazing wife. I promise to always cherish you and learn from my mistakes." Neelam smiled and replied, "And I promise to always love you, faults and all." They left the hill station feeling closer and more connected than ever before. They had learned that instead of beating themselves up for past failures, they could use them as opportunities to learn, grow, and improve. And most importantly, they had learned that love, patience, and understanding were the keys to a happy marriage. Chapter 10. Celebrate Yourself. Sagar and Neelam were overjoyed to welcome their new bundle of joy into the world. As first-time parents, they were nervous, excited, and filled with emotions they had never experienced before. They were in the nursing home, where Neelam had given birth to their baby boy just a few hours ago. Sagar couldn't stop staring at his son, marveling at how perfect he was. Neelam was exhausted from labor and delivery, but she couldn't take her eyes off her newborn son either. She felt a rush of love and protectiveness that she had never known before. As they sat there in the quiet of the nursing home room, Sagar and Neelam couldn't help but feel grateful for everything that had brought them to this moment. Sagar turned to Neelam and said, "We did it. We have a son. I am so proud of us." Neelam smiled weakly and replied, "Yes, we did it. He is so beautiful, isn't he?" Sagar nodded and replied, "Yes, he is. We have so much to celebrate, don't we?" Neelam's expression turned puzzled as she replied, "Celebrate? What do we have to celebrate?" Sagar smiled and replied, "Everything. We have been on a long journey to get here. We have celebrated each other's successes, our marriage, and our pregnancy. Now, we have a new addition to our family. We need to celebrate ourselves and our accomplishments." Neelam's expression turned thoughtful as she considered what Sagar had said. She realized that he was right. They had been so focused on the pregnancy and delivery that they hadn't taken the time to celebrate their hard work and progress. "You are right," Neelam said, "we should celebrate." "What should we do?" Sagar thought for a moment before saying, "Well, we could start by taking a moment to acknowledge everything we have done to get here. We have worked hard to get to this point, and we should be proud of ourselves. We could also plan a small celebration with our friends and family once we get home." Neelam nodded in agreement, feeling grateful for Sagar's perspective. He had always been good at reminding her to celebrate herself and her accomplishments, big or small. As they sat there with their new son, Sagar and Neelam took the time to reflect on everything that had brought them to this moment. They talked about the challenges they had faced, the support they had received from family and friends, and the love they had for each other. In that moment, they felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything that had led them to this moment. They had celebrated themselves and their journey, and it had brought them to the most significant accomplishment of their lives. A few days later, Sagar and Neelam brought their son home from the nursing home. They were greeted with balloons, flowers, and congratulations from friends and family. They felt loved and supported as they settled into their new roles as parents. As they sat together with their son in their arms, Sagar and Neelam felt a sense of pride and joy that they had never known before. They had celebrated themselves and their accomplishments, and it had led them to this moment. They knew that there would be challenges ahead, but they felt ready to face them together. As their son slept peacefully in their arms, Sagar and Neelam took a moment to reflect on everything that had brought them to this moment. They felt grateful for each other, for their journey, and for the love that surrounded them. Dear listeners, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all my listeners who have taken the time to listen to my audiobook, The Art of Self-Care, which I wrote. Thank you for your support, and I hope that the book has been helpful in your journey towards better self-care. With love, Sanjay Agarwala, India, West Bengal, Jalpaiguri, mobile number 9832503203.